Welcome back, everyone. So we will continue our topic of freedom, Kaivalyam, unconditional happiness. So let's review the sutra that we saw before. Vastu samye chitta bheda tayor vibhakta pantaha. That means the same object is experienced differently by different chittas. It could be the chitta in different people's minds, or it could be the same person that are experiencing the object at two different times because they're using multiple chittas. Okay, so this begs the question, which perspective should I choose? In this example, you have 8 or infinity. In fact, the other day, when Dr. Shroff was saying, so walk in the figure of 8, I was wondering, maybe we should say walk in infinity. Walk in infinity.
It's called the infinity walk.
Infinity walk. So you have seen similar examples like 9 and 6. From one side it appears as 9, from other side it appears as 6. So different perspectives, and you have optical illusions, right? Some people say it's an old person, some others say it's a young lady, and if you see it from different perspectives, you will see only one of the two optical illusions and so forth. Which is the correct? Instead of using the word correct, we can say which perspective serves us the best. What is the best perspective to choose? You have infinite ways in which you can orient yourself. The vantage point from which you see it is different. You can locate yourself in multiple places. So which is the vantage point that will serve you the best? And Patanjali says, freedom or Kaivalya is nothing but locating yourself at a vantage point. Is going to say what that vantage point is. That will allow you to see the best of that vastu. What is that vantage point? And Patanjali gives an answer to that question in one of the sutras. So this is a definition of what is Kaivalya. So would you like to know what is that vantage point, right? And the sutra, I think, is number 24 of the 4th chapter. Sutra goes, Vastu samye chitta bheda tayor vibhakta pantaha. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the 15th. I just repeated the previous one. This one is Vishesha darshina atma bhava bhavana nivrittihi. Vishesha darshina. You see, there are different ways in which you can see the object. Darshanam, perspective. Perspective creates perception. How we perceive it depends on our vantage point or the perspective, or the vantage point from which you see it. So we need to choose a Vishesha Darshanam, a particular vantage point. Particular vantage point. And what is that vantage point? Vishesha Darshana, Atma Bhava Bhavana. And then the result of that is Nivritti. Nivritti means it's another synonym for Kaivalyam. Vritti means activity. Nivritti means everything settles down. You are no longer caught up. You are free. You are free from the vrittis. Nivritti. So what is the vantage point? The vantage point is the vantage point of the self. The self. Not the vantage point of your eyes, but the vantage point of your self. Vishesha Darsana, Atma Bhava Bhavana, Atman. How does the Atman see this? So in order to understand the sutra, let's revisit what we saw yesterday. We saw that ultimately there is no difference between the Atman and the Ishvara. Right? They're different, but they're the identical twins, you can say. The Atman is no different. It is no better or no less than Ishvara. So you can reframe this statement as, what is the vantage point from which Ishvara sees the same thing? How will Ishvara see the same situation, this event or this vastu? Let me align my vantage point so that I look at it from the same direction or the same eyes as Ishvara. So this will liberate you, Patanjali says. This will give you Kaivalyam. So in order to experience Kaivalyam, we don't have to do anything. You just have to reposition our inner world, see it from a different set of eyes. We say beauty lies in the eye of the beholder, right? What Patanjali says is almost the same thing. He says, beauty lies in the eye of the beholder, not the EYE, but the eye. I am that eye. Beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. From the vantage point of the Atman, when you see, it is nothing but the same vantage point as the Ishvara. Or you can interpret it in your own words. For example, how would God see this? Or how would my guru see this? Or how would a great sage see this? What would Buddha do now? I think there's a book of that title, right? What would Buddha do now? So what is the best sagely way in which we can address the same situation? What would an enlightened person do? How would they perceive the same event? Let's take an example. Suppose we see somebody very angry. Perhaps the first thought that can come to mind is, oh, they are a bad person, or they always get angry and I don't like to be with them, and they're hurting themselves, they're hurting the team. So like that, all these thoughts come up. How would Ishvara see the same thing? Remember, Ishvara is all-knowing. I think we saw this sutra yesterday, right? Tatra niratishayam sarvagya bijam, sarvajna. Ishvara is all-knowing. So from the perspective of all-knowingness, what would Ishvara see in that person who is angry? Perhaps Ishvara will say, their anger is just a symptom. But there's a root cause that was producing that symptom. Let's see what the root cause is. Maybe they're hurt within. So they say inside the heart of a culprit, there is always a victim crying for help. So they don't know what to do. They're just simply acting out their hurt. And it is compelling them to express themselves in that way. So it's not because they're a bad person. It is because they're suffering. They're in pain. They're caught up in klesha. And they're doing klesha jama karma, not dhyana jama karma. So when we look at it from this fresh set of eyes, then perhaps we have compassion for them. They need help. How can I help you? If somebody is very angry, instead of saying, you're wrong, listen to me, or throw the anger back at them. Gandhi says, there's a quote up there, an eye for an eye, and soon the whole world becomes blind, right? So if anger strikes us, and if we respond back in anger, it's not solving the problem. We are just two angry people now. And now the anger will spread to even more. So instead of looking at them as an angry person, we can look at them as, maybe they have some suffering. How can I help them? Maybe, can I get you a glass of water? You see, not looking at the periphery, but looking at something that is deeper, that is perhaps producing that anger. It makes sense, right? So in order to illustrate this, my teacher used to give a very beautiful analogy. And that's what we're going to see in the chart, in the whiteboard. You see a sun, and this blue thing is our earth, and you have a moon. Okay? Sun, earth, and the moon. From the vantage point of the sun, would the sun see any shadow? No, right? Because whatever sun sees, the sun is illuminating it. It will never see any shadow. When do we see the full moon? The moon appears full only when the vantage point from which the earth is seeing the moon is aligned with the vantage point of the sun and the moon. You see? You can think of the sun as the Ishvara, and the other relative vantage point as the mind. The chitta is seeing an object. And when the chitta is moving around, chitta is the moon here. In fact, they make a relationship between the chitta and the moon. They say lunatic, right? Lunar. It's related to the moon. The phases of the moon has an effect on the mind. So when the moon is moving around the earth, depending on the perspective that it gives to the earth, when it's aligned with the sun, we see the fullness, the beauty of the full moon. When it is totally lack of alignment, when it's in the opposite side, we don't see anything at all. New moon, right? So how much of our perspective is aligned with the perspective of Ishvara? The more aligned we are, we see the fullness of the situation. It will not bother us. Our mind will not get into negative emotion. In fact, anytime we experience a negative emotion, it is an indicator that our point of view is different from the point of view of Ishvara. The perspective that we are donning right now has deviated from the perspective of Ishvara. God is not thinking this way. Ishvara is not thinking this way. That is why I'm feeling miserable. When I see a person and it brings negative emotion, that means I'm not seeing the full situation. I'm deviated from the perspective of Ishvara. What is the perspective of Ishvara? All-knowing. If we know everything about everybody, would we still feel angry about them? And the answer is we'll always see divinity in them, because every Purusha is no different from Ishvara. So from the perspective of Ishvara, whatever other Purushas Ishvara sees is divinity, divine. And this is captured. So how to bring that into practice, right? The next question is, how can I bring this into practice? And Patanjali gives this practice in the very first chapter of the Yoga Sutras. And the sutra goes, Tat pradishedartham ekatattva abhyasaha. Ekatattva abhyasa. So it's abhyasa, it's a practice that Patanjali gives. And what is this practice? It is the practice of seeing the ekatattva. What is ekatattva? Right? Some people just translate it as be focused on one thing. Ekatattva. Instead of scattering the mind in different places, focus on one thing. But there's a deeper meaning to it. The deeper meaning is, in Sankhya, remember when we spoke a little bit about Sankhya, we said the Purusha is one tattva, and then the Prakriti is 24 tattvas. There is a multiplicity in the Prakriti. So when we say Eka Tattva, we are actually referring to the Purusha. Purusha is one entity. And then the Prakriti is 25 entities. It is called Aneka Tattva. Prakriti is Aneka Tattva. Purusha is Eka Tattva. So Eka Tattva Abhyasa means practice the art of seeing the Purusha, which means Purusha is no different from Ishvara. Another way to say it is practice seeing divinity in the heart of all beings. That is the practice that will take us to liberation, Kaivalya. Because in Kaivalya, we are actually aligning our perspective with the perspective of Ishvara. It's very fascinating, right? Aligning our perspective with the perspective of God, we can say. That's what this example illuminates. From the perspective of the sun, it doesn't see any shadow because it's the source of that light. There's no way, if one thing the sun is ignorant about, it is ignorant about darkness. Because whatever it illumines, it will appear bright. So that is the perspective of Ishvara. Now, how to practice this Ekatattva Abhyasa? It's easier said than done, right? It's very easy to see the divine presence in the heart of a great sage, because they're always truthful, they're always kind, they're always helping other people, there is no selfish motive. You can easily appreciate them. Appreciating somebody is what? You're actually seeing the divinity in them. The more divinity we see in them, we are actually respecting them, appreciating them. When we say namaste, the divine in me recognizes the divine in you. We're actually practicing Ekatattva Abhyasa. That's a beautiful way for greeting, right? Namaste. So how do we practice that even for those people who we label as non-sage or non-saintly people, regular people, or the other extreme, people who do damage to the society? how can we see the divinity there? Because for sure divinity is there. There is Purusha in the heart of all people. In fact, Bhagavad Gita says, 18th chapter, 61st verse. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tishtati. Ishvara resides in the heart of all beings. Hriddesha, in the heart place, Ishvara resides in all beings. So even in the heart of somebody who we label as a terrorist, the Ishvara Tattva resides there, that Eka Tattva resides there. So the practice of seeing the divine, wherever you set your gaze on, will lead us to Kaivalyam. That is the Abhyasa that will lead us to Kaivalyam. Patanjali says, because he knows it's very difficult to practice, right? So he gives us a tool, this Abhyasa, Eka Tattva Abhyasa, and then he also says how to practice Eka Tattva Abhyasa for different types of people. And that is what he's going to say in the next sutra. So would you like to know how to practice the Eka Tattva Abhyasa for different types of people? So let me quote the sutra. The sutra goes, Maitri Karuna Muditopekshanam Sukha Dukkha Punya Apunya Vishayanam Bhavanatas Chitta Prasadanam. Maitri Karuna Muditopekshanam Sukha Dukkha Punya Punya Vishayanam Bhavanatas Chitta Prasadanam. So what is the meaning of this verse? Patanjali categorizes people into 4 types. You can say 4 buckets of people. And depending on which type they belong to, you have to change your vantage point based on that. You see, the Purusha is the same. Same in the sense they are identical. It's Ishvara hiding there in the heart of them. But in order to see the Purusha, you have to locate yourself in a different vantage point, depending on which of the 4 types of people that you are looking at. So what are the 4 types of people? He says Sukha, people who are happy. Dukkha, people who are not happy, who are suffering. And then the third one is Punya, people who are engaged in good activities. And then Apunya, people who are not engaged in good activities. You can say virtuous versus vice, V-I-C, vice people. People who have some bad habits, or even people who make mistakes, or to take to the extreme, terrorists and people who are doing a lot of damage to the society. So these are the 4 types of people. Happy, sad, people who are doing good work, and then people who are not doing good work. And for each of the 4 types, we have to change our perspective. So what is the perspective that we give for happy people, for Sukha? And the answer Patanjali gives is Maitri. Be friendly with happy people. When you are friendly with happy people, you will easily see the divinity in them. And it will help you also to see the divinity in yourself. Usually when we see a happy person, the mind might complain. Oh, they are happy, I am not, life is unfair. Like that, the mind will go on a complaining trip. But Patanjali says it's not going to benefit you, because neither will you see the divinity in them. Now you are complaining, you are not even established in your own divinity. A person who is established in the divine self, it's like the sun will never see a shadow. So a person who is established in the divine will not complain. So the answer is be friendly with them. Because when we are friendly with them, when we see a friend happy, we are also happy. And from a place of happiness, it's very easy to see the divine in the other. Because when we are happy, we are actually swastha. We are established in the self. Only then we can truly be happy. And from that place, you can see the divinity in the other. Makes sense, right? That is for Sukha. Second type of people is Dukkha. People who are miserable or people who are suffering in that moment. And the same person can traverse from these 4 buckets. Sometimes they are happy, sometimes they are sad. So depending on the context, we position our vantage point. So for a person who is suffering, how should we offer our perspective? From which vantage point do we relate to them? So for a suffering person, for dukkha, for dukkhi, you offer karuna. Karuna means compassion. You don't stop with being friendly. You don't stop with maitri. You go beyond friendship. You go to the place of karuna. Now that brings the question, what is karuna or compassion? What is the true meaning of compassion? Is it pity? Oh, you poor thing. Is that what we are saying? No. Compassion means, let me give an example of the opposite of compassion. Suppose a child comes running to you, crying, and says, oh, I have a tummy ache. But if we tell the child, I told you not to eat that junk food. You didn't listen to me. And now you're having tummy ache. You have to deal with it. Right? So that is an example of not karuna, opposite of compassion. You see? So compassion means, I know you're suffering right now. It doesn't matter whether it's because you didn't listen to me or you did not follow the rules. Right now you're suffering. So let me give you a helping hand. How can I relieve you of the suffering? Let's worry about what is right, what is wrong, why you didn't listen to me later. In this moment, I want to help relieve you of your suffering. So that is compassion. That is karuna. Makes sense, right? My teacher used to give an example of the most compassionate thing in the universe. You know what it is? Our GPS, navigational system. Even if we don't listen to the GPS, it says take this exit. We ignore the GPS, we keep going on the freeway. It doesn't say, oh, you didn't listen to me. I'm no longer going to give you instruction. It doesn't say, I have taken you 50 times to the same place. You still don't know how to get there. It doesn't say that. Right? It doesn't say, go back to where you are and then I'll reroute you. It simply says, okay, rerouting, and from where we are to the destination, it will simply recalculate. So that is compassion. It will never yell at you. It will always give you a helping hand. You want to get there, you are here. It will not judge you. Why are you there? It is not going to ask you. And it will simply take you to your destination. That is being compassionate. So when we see a person suffering, rather than asking them, why are you in that place of suffering? Why did you smoke so many cigarettes? At that time is not the moment to ask that question. You're suffering now. Let me give you a helping hand. Let's see about lifestyle changes and all that later. But in this moment, let's see how I can assist you, how I can relieve you of the suffering. That is compassion. Now, sometimes what happens when we see a sad person, instead of being compassionate, we also become sad. That is why Patanjali says, don't stop with friendship, go to compassion. If we are remaining at the level of friendship, when we see a friend being sad, we also become sad. And the unfortunate thing is, we have not solved the problem. There was one sad person before. Now there are two sad people, right? We have just increased the population of sad people on the planet. So it's going to help nobody. So we are not seeing the divinity in them. Now we are sad. We are also uprooted from our divinity. So being compassionate means you're anchored to the place of self. And then you are offering a helping hand. Divine is helping. So how can I assist you now? Let me not judge you. How can I assist you now? This is karuna. So maitri for sukha. And then karuna for dukkha. Maitri for sukhi. Karuna for dukhi. And then the third type of people is people who are doing good activities, punya, who are doing virtuous things. And they're helping the society. And also they're helping themselves, like they're keeping the body healthy, they're eating sattvic food, and they're helping others. So they're punya people. To people who are engaged in good activities, offer mudita. We spoke about anumodita before, the same mudita. Mudita means feel happy for them. Imagine that you are doing that work. That happiness, if you were doing the same good work, how happy you will feel. Offer that same happiness for them. Don't see any separation that they are doing good work. I'm still not doing anything. I'm not good at anything. It's not like that. Don't encourage that thought. Use that as an example to think, oh, how as a team, both of us are, don't see any separation, as if I am doing that good work. So bring up that mudita, that happiness, mudita.
So this aspect is, you can also get
that punya, that we saw that before, right? So when we watch that and when we feel happy about it, anumodita, it will accrue our karma also. You see, we spoke, it's anumodita. We see that example, inspiring example, and we feel happy about it. And that karma will come to us also, anumodita. Because sometimes what happens, if we didn't have this knowledge, what would the mind decide about that event? Oh, they are doing so good work, but the ego will come up. It will say, let me nitpick so that I can diminish them. If I was Steve Jobs, I would have designed iPhone differently. You see, at least they have done something. They did some great work. So the mind will start nitpicking. So that is an example of the opposite of mudita. So mudita means feel happy for them, as if you're doing that same thing. Mudita also means appreciation. Appreciation. Appreciate what they are doing. Appreciating. In this world, there are so many people who are doing excellent work. We don't hear much about them, but we hear a lot about what are all the bad things that are happening. We put a spotlight of focus. All the newspapers and the media, they scout for all the horrible things that are happening, and they put it on a platter and serve it to us. And we think that the whole world, we are in Kali Yuga. That's why it's all the bad things are happening. But truly, if we see from the eyes of Ishvara, from the vantage point of the sun, really there are so much good things that are happening. It doesn't see a shadow at all. So offer mudita for people who are doing good work. And then the last one, for people who are doing not so good work, offer what is called upeksha. Upeksha is a very interesting word. Ikshate means to see. To see something is called ikshanam. Akshi, eyes. Ikshate means to see. Upa ikshate, that is what becomes upeksha. Upa means don't look at it directly, look at it from a different place. Like if you want to see a very faint star, if you look at it directly, you don't see it very clearly. But if you look at it a little distance away, you are able to see the dim star. It becomes more clear. Not in the direct vision, but a little off. So look at the person from this perspective, upeksha. What it means is, don't look at their actions directly. Because if you keep focusing the spotlight on their actions, you are missing out on the divinity. You see, it's like someone lost their key in the garden and they're frantically searching for it. So there's a passerby who asks, where did you lose your key? Let me help you. When was the last time you remember you lost your key? And then he says, over there, I lost my key. So the passerby was surprised. Then why are you searching here? Because this is where light is shining. There it's very dark. Very easy to search here, right? So the point is, if you put the spotlight of focus only on the actions of what they are doing, then the light you're not showing on where Ishvara is actually residing. That is where the key is residing. It is dark now because it's not expressing itself in their actions. But if we keep looking at the actions and complaining about, oh, look at what horrible things they're doing, you'll miss out on seeing the divinity in them. So don't look directly into their action. Search for it elsewhere. That is what upeksha is. You see, it doesn't mean that we ignore what they're doing. It's like the burglar comes home. Okay, I'm going to ignore you. Take what you want. It's not like that at all. We take the necessary consequences, the actions, the follow through has to be done, but we don't judge them as a bad person. You see, maybe something is compelling them to do all these nefarious activities. Maybe they've forgotten who they are. They know not what they are doing, right? They've forgotten who they are and they are acting out in this way. So let me not focus on their actions. Let me see who they really are. Let me see where I can find the Ishvara in them. You see, it's like, there's a story of Angulimala. Angulimala was a big terrorist. He used to chop fingers of passerby. He used to live in the forest. And everybody were terrorized by Angulimala. And one day, Buddha was passing by that forest. Angulimala jumped on him. He said, I'm going to chop your fingers and I'm going to add it to this mala, your angulis, the fingers. And Buddha said, oh, if it's going to make you happy, please, you can cut my fingers. Now, that gave a pause to the apunya thoughts of Angulimala because he was not expecting that type of reaction from anybody. Usually when he makes his appearance, people will be terrified. But here is somebody who says, willingly you can take my fingers. So this surprised him. This is something unusual. So what is going on? So when Angulimala's mind had this pause of these vrittis, when he was thinking what's going on, when mind stopped its regular flow of thoughts, Buddha sneaked in there. He took that opportunity. He said, do you really think it has brought you happiness? Chopping all these fingers. You have been doing this for 25 years. And has it really brought you happiness? And then he thought for a bit and he said, you are right. It has not really given me any joy. And people are actually fleeing from me. Nobody wants to be with me. So, and Buddha said, the presence of Buddha actually transformed him. There's a sutra in the second chapter, Ahimsa Pratisthayam Tatsannidho Vairatyaga. In the presence of Buddha, Angulimala did not even have violent thoughts. It simply disappeared. And he could see the happiness that Buddha is experiencing within. He could see that it was a higher level of happiness than what Angulimala thought he was receiving happiness by destroying people's lives. So at that moment, he fell at his feet and said, oh, I want to be your student. Please help me to reach that same happiness. And then Buddha takes him to the ashram. He becomes one of his devotees. He transformed the life of Angulimala. So the point here is, if Buddha said to Angulimala, oh, you're a bad person, it would have no way transformed him. Buddha was able to see the divinity in Angulimala even when Angulimala was not able to see it in himself. That is the role of the Guru, right? That's the role of a person who can transform people. Let me give one more example. I usually travel weekends like this to teach yoga courses and so forth. I used to do it a lot. About 10 years back, every weekend I used to go and teach in different cities. So one time when I was staying in a host's home, it was actually a college station. And one morning, the child of the home, 6-year-old boy, at the time he was 6 years old, he was making a lot of ruckus. He was breaking toys, he was screaming, yelling and crying and all that. And the mom turned to him and said, a good boy like you will not do that. And I thought, wow, what is a beautiful expression of upeksha, right? That means the mom didn't say, you are a bad boy. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Nobody will talk to you if you're like that. The mom didn't make the child feel bad. That is the opposite of upeksha. That is, full iksha was there on the bad behavior. But the mom turned it around and said, you are a good boy. A good boy like you will not do that. So immediately he transformed. He said, "Oh yeah, you were right." And then he went to his room and it transformed. He was doing something. He started playing his violin or something. So that is upeksha. It has a power to transform. One of the expressions of upeksha is forgiveness. Forgiveness, not shining the spotlight on all the mistakes that the other person did. For 25 years back, you did that mistake, so I'm still not going to talk to you. Whereas forgiveness means I'm not going to keep regurgitating on the error that they made. I'm just going to see the best in you. I'm going to see the divinity in you. Another example, when people write code, when people write software, there are several software engineers. They all write computer program. They all write code. Inadvertently, people introduce bugs, right? Inadvertently. We don't go to the programmer that introduced a bug and say, "Why did you do it? You're a buddhu. You're good for nothing." We don't say that, right? We give space for people to make mistakes. That's why you have like a QA team. They'll try to break the software in all kinds of ways and ferret out all the bugs. But we don't condemn or judge people just because they introduced a bug. A bug is something like apunya, some error or mistake that they introduce. So rather than trying to vilify them, what do? It becomes impersonal, a debugging exercise, regardless of who introduced that bug, and pointing them and saying, "You are the culprit. You should not have done that." We just simply debug it and move on. So another way of upeksha is not to see intentions behind other people's mistakes. If somebody makes a mistake, not to see intention behind them. "Oh, you did it deliberately. You should not have done it. You should have known better." Rather than saying that, "Oh, perhaps you did it to err is human." You could say something like that. So making error is part of a human experience. So let's move on. So that is what is upeksha. Makes sense?
Can you elaborate on that last part a little bit more?
So do not see intentions behind other people's mistakes. Do not see intention behind other people's mistakes, because mistakes happen. And when we think that they did it deliberately, that means we are shining a very focused spotlight on that mistake. You see, it's totally opposite of upeksha. It is full ikshanam, seeing the thing directly. So see it elsewhere. Soften the spotlight on the mistake. Okay, it happened indeliberately. Just happens, and move on.
I have
So in this day and age,
Sriramji,
yes,
I think that one of the 5 key points of Sri Ravi Shankarji, to the another level, that do not see the intention behind anybody's either action or even inaction.
yes.
So
Actually, do not see intentions behind others' mistakes. That mistake could be either through action or inaction.
or inaction, right?
Yes. So when we look at the newspapers today, or when we log on, CNN.com, we see all horrible things, right? This is the exact opposite of upeksha. Whatever bad things that are happening in the world, we shine a very strong spotlight and serve that to the people. That is the opposite of upeksha. Upeksha, what it will do is, whenever some horrible things are happening, it will just, state it as a fact, not magnify and put drama and music around it and amplify it and make it something big. It will actually go and find out what good things are happening. So punya, and they will mudita. Mudita is appreciation. By the way, the word appreciation is very interesting. Appreciate means we are saying good things, right? It also means to increase. When we say the home has appreciated in value. So mudita also lends itself for exaggeration. Appreciate them. Okay, he is the sun, the moon, he is the Indra, Devata, like that. So when somebody is doing good things, Patanjali is saying, using the word mudita, that okay, they are like superman, superwoman, like that. So we do the opposite for the Apunya people. They are the most horrible terrorists in this day and age. The last 200 years, the superlative words they use. So upeksha also means being indifferent to the action. Indifferent. Of course, we take the necessary steps, call 911, whatever, but do not shine the spotlight on the action. Be indifferent to it. Take your awareness to who they really are, rather than with their actions. Their actions are not in alignment with who they are, and therefore they are suffering. A person who is truly happy, who is connected to the self, will not be unkind. They will not do damaging things. So that is the idea behind upeksha. So that is how we see the divinity for all four types of people. That is how we practice Eka Tattva Abhyasa, the one single principle, which is Purusha. To see that, we practice Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, and Upeksha for Sukha, Dukkha, Punya, Apunya, Vishayanam, Bhavanata, Chitta Prasaranam. And once Eka Tattva Abhyasa is established, you see divinity everywhere. That means you are in the vantage point of Ishvara. You are seeing everything from the vantage point of the self. Vishesha Darshana, Atma Bhava Bhavana Nivrittihi. And that will give us that Kaivalya experience. We are now totally unconditionally loving, unconditionally happy, unconditionally peaceful. So I think at this point we could open up for any Q&A. It was very interesting, right? It's an amazing advice, amazing wisdom that Patanjali has given.
In terms of compassion, I had a question. When is compassion too much? In other words, if a person makes the same mistakes or gets into the same dukkha causing situations again and again and again, when is it our duty or our role to say that, this person needs something more than my help?
Right. It's a good question, right? We cannot always be like a GPS. So the point is, at the moment of intense suffering, we always give a helping hand. That's not the time to talk about how you can change your life or how you can change your lifestyle habits. But once they come out of that immediate suffering, like chronic suffering, then if we are compassionate and we extend the compassion, we can say, have you thought about doing this? But we don't assert that in our experience. We can just present to them as an option. And maybe we can inspire them also by using some tricks, or you can say, that person had the same thing and they started doing yoga. It transformed their life. It has cured the diabetes, whatever. You can say all those things. Or you can say, in my own life, I had that experience and I'm helping you with first-hand experience. So yes, that is also a part of compassion. So compassion doesn't mean seeing them as a powerless being. That's what pity does. Oh, you poor thing. That will make them feel dependent. But compassion means I'm just giving you a helping hand to relieve you of the suffering that you're going through right now.
That is the same. Connect before you correct.
Connect before you?
Correct.
Correct.
Connect before you correct.
That's a beautiful wisdom. Connect before correct.
And when there is a connection, there's bound to be communication. If
Exactly.
There's no communication, there's no registration. And again, there has to be spontaneity too. Even like, for example, if you get mad at that point due to whatever reason, that's okay, spontaneity. But if you have slip, and when you realize there's no harm in going back and saying sorry as well. So even the child learns that even mom can make mistakes. So what? We are not like super women or superhuman here. Like it happens, but there's no harm in being humble and corrected.
Yes, that makes a very good point. What you mentioned is an example of using upeksha on ourselves. So when we are doing apunya acts, use the same upeksha on the self. Use Maitri when we are happy. Be friend with yourself. And when we are going through a sad experience, a miserable experience, be compassionate to yourself. You see? And then when we do some good work, appreciate yourself. Oh, that's good. It gives me happiness. Yes. And then when we do a mistake, offer upeksha. I'm sorry. Offer upeksha. Let's not shine the spotlight of awareness there.
Thank you for pointing it inward. And because otherwise all this time I was reading it and applying it outward, never inward so much. But that
is equally important.
Yeah, charity begins at home, right?
Yes.
Start here first. Yeah.
We have to see the divinity within. We have to position ourselves in the divine within us. Only then when we can see the divinity in the other. We have to tune the radio dial here. And then we start seeing like frequency in the other.
Right.
A person who's disconnected from the divine, they will not appreciate the other. They will just see all the negative traits, or they will just be complaining about the other. That is why the reading Namaste, that means let me see the divinity. Let me position myself in the divinity. Let me set the vantage point to the divine presence. And from there, I see the divinity in you.
Because we can only give what we have. What we have. Otherwise, it's all borrowed. Though borrowed, but imbibe it, make it your own, internalize it, then it becomes your own. And then you can easily give out. It becomes very natural.
Yes, be the change you wish to see.
Yes.
So when we ourselves, we can change the way we see things. We can change the other also. So let me do one thing. I will create a different recording for the Q&A. So I'm going to stop this.